Greetings, good evening, namaste, welcome to our webinar based on Swami Kriyanandaji's book, Affirmations for Self-Healing. My name is Nayaswami Devarshi. I'm here with Brahmachari Premdas. And tonight's topic is self-expansion. Let's begin first with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, help us to release the hold of our little self, offering it into thy infinite self, expanding more and more until we merge back into thee. Bring us home. Free us now. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I'll read what Swami Kriyananda has said about this topic of self-expansion. He says, self-expansion is the essence of all aspiration. Why do we seek to possess things? Because by acquisition, we imagine we'll expand our dominion. Why do we seek to learn more? Because we think by enlarging our knowledge to expand our understanding. And why do we seek ever new experiences? Because we believe that through them, we'll expand our awareness. When you stretch a lump of dough outward, it becomes not only broader, but thinner. Such often is the case when we stretch the mind only outwardly. Reaching out too far, we sacrifice depth in our lives. The self-expansion toward which all life aspires is of the spirit, an expansion of sympathy, of love, of the awareness that comes from sensing God's presence everywhere. And let's affirm together, first out loud and then more quietly. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze. Renouncing my little egoic self, I expand with my great soul self everywhere. And again, repeat after me, but more quietly. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self, I expand with my great soul self everywhere. And now mentally only, repeating it mentally after me. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self. I expand with my great soul self everywhere. and mentally pray, Beloved Spirit in all that is, help me in my own nothingness to find myself one with all that is. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Welcome friends to this evening's webinar. So I'm going to first speak today and then Devarshi ji is going to cover on the same topic. So self-expansion. So the first thoughts that came to my mind when thinking of this topic, I think many of you who are attending today's session might have read this book, Lessons in Meditation. It is written by Jyotish ji. There in that book, I think it's mainly in the first chapter. He explains that meditation has 3 steps, 3 stages. The first stage is relaxing the body and mind. The second stage is concentrating single pointedly on the object of your meditation. And third point is expanding your sense of identity until you realize your unity with all creation. So self-expansion is an important step. So I think most of us who have been meditating now, we know that, and that's what we do during after we finish our techniques and try to dive deep. And now also Swami Kriyananda ji shares this in one of his books. There are 2 currents that operates constantly in life. The one is expansive, the other is contractive. An expansive reaction is accompanied by inner sense of fulfillment, whereas a contractive reaction is accompanied by misery and bitterness. So from this, we'll understand that we'll find fulfillment in life to the extent that we succeed in reaching out towards and embracing a larger reality than our little selves. So now, at this point, I would like to narrate a story or share a story which I remember reading in my school days. It was in one of those books. So what happens in this story is a small child is there. I think she fights with her mom and finally she succeeds in getting money for buying a big ice cream. Her mom gives only money for her, like let's say the ice cream was like 10 rupees, you get a bigger box, and 5 rupees, you get a smaller one. Mom used to give only 5 rupees concerning her health and everything. But somehow today in her argument, she won, and the little child was so happy on cloud 9 because she got her 10 rupees. So now she's going to this shop. But this time, when she goes near that cart puller who is selling this ice cream, she sees that this is a kid almost same of her age, and he doesn't have clothes. It doesn't look like he's wearing good clothes. He doesn't look like he's going to even school. So, so now she goes there, and for some reason, she again purchases the smaller ice cream which she usually purchases. She has her ice cream fill, content, and then before leaving gives the total amount of 10 rupees to the kid and says, please keep it. Now what made that this little child to do something like a sacrifice here, trying to give the entire 10 rupees, not thinking of her ice cream? I think more than sacrifice, I think it's the happiness she got. So this, like I just read few lines of Swamiji about how expansive reaction is accompanied by inner sense of fulfillment. So the fulfillment she got by giving it to the kid there who was selling ice creams was more fulfilling to her compared to eating that whole big ice cream for herself. So I think there's something we can all learn from this small story. And in the same way, now let's see. Now, what does avatars do it? Or let's think of Paramhansa Master. How does he do it? Like, for example, you would have all seen the Answer movie. There is one scene in which the car just stops. I think he just gets down the car. Then he goes into this shop. He starts buying this random things, one upon one upon one. And he goes to the counter, gives the amount. And the person on the counter is in tears now. She needed that same amount badly, she explains to Paramhansa Yogananda ji during this encounter. And then Master walks out silently. So if you are in tune with God, you'll be able to help more. That's what we understand from that. Now at this point, I would also like to share now on one how self-acceptance has a relation to self-expansion. An expansion, an expansive consciousness is mark of a healthy ego. An unhealthy ego, on the contrary, is demonstrated by contractiveness. So few of us many times will live either in these modes, will not live either completely in expansive or completely in contractive. We always go through these phases. But most of us who have been meditating, we may have more of this more expansive spirit and very few times go back to contractiveness. But it's usually until we realize, until we are more anchored in God, we keep traveling, facing between these two phases. Now, what happens when in contractive mode, when we try to accept, what happens? The self-acceptance, the very effort to accept oneself as he is, affirms his little illnesses and pain. You would have discovered that whenever you are in contractive spirit, if you try to think about yourself, what are you going to do? You're going to compare yourself, and you're going to compare yourself with others, and it's not such a good feeling. You would have seen the best thing that you can do is try to expand your spirit. For example, you'll say, I'm just as worthy as he is. So if you want to affirm yourself, or otherwise you're going to complain like, he's preventing me from developing a sense of my own worthiness. So this is what happens when we are in a contractive mind. Now, way back to self-acceptance is first to get into expansive mode by affirming a more generous giving attitude towards others. Only after cultivating an expansive outlook can a person see himself accurately in his relation to others and to greater scheme of things. Later, now once he is in this expanded perspective, it will be possible for him to affirm his independence of other people or non-dependence on them without at the same time affirming those attitudes of self-withdrawal which make a person forever in his own mind at least a victim of his life. At this point, one can affirm safely at last his own integrity in relation to others and life as a whole. So I think, friends, I think you were able to understand this point. I thought it was a very interesting point. That's why sharing with you how sometimes when we are in contractive, we try to think, and how when we are expansive, it's a better time. For example, and also Swamiji ends here by saying that while traveling the road back to self-acceptance, bear in mind that you, in common with every other human being, are unique. The melody you have to sing is yours alone for all eternity. How beautifully said by Swamiji. And I think I also remember that Deviji once asked there was a Swami visiting Ananda long back, and she said, how can I go further in the spiritual path in this somewhat in similar lines, and how can I travel far and further till this incarnation or further? And then the Swami replies back telling that one of the rules is not to compare with others. So I'm going to pass this at this point to Devarshi ji.
Thank you, Premdas. That was very helpful. And he pointed out these two push and pull of expansion and contraction. And for yogis and people who want freedom, it comes from expanding even the ego. We think of the ego as a bad thing and we want to kill the ego, but we can't kill the ego. We can only offer it to the Lord. We can offer it in service to others. We can only expand it. Until then, it becomes united with the infinite. In a way, it becomes an infinite ego because it expands and almost even dissolves into the entire ocean. It's almost like a bottle in the ocean that's separate from the ocean, but when you take the cork off the top of the bottle and allow the water to enter and become one with the whole ocean, then it expands in a sense. And so this is really the direction we want to go on the spiritual path. And there are some ways that we can do this. One is to meditate with a sense of expansion. There are many beautiful guided visualizations that Yoganandaji gave called metaphysical meditations. Swami Kriyananda reads some of these. They can be found here and there online, and they're guided visualizations that we do towards the end of our meditation practice as a way of expanding our consciousness until it's finally united and one with God. Now, another simple way of practicing expansion and developing expansion is through seva and service to others. You see this, that people, like the story that Premdas shared of that girl who decided that she wasn't going to get the whole big ice cream for herself because that would have been contractive. And she just felt this sense intuitively and innately to share and give to this other child of what she had, sacrificing in a way. It's not a sacrifice at all that she made because she gained so much more. She gained expansion and she gained happiness, peace of mind, joy, all these qualities. And so when we give to others of ourselves, far from losing anything, we gain everything. This is just one of the great secrets of the universe, is that when we give to others, what we give of ourselves, we give not away. In a sense, we become much greater, bigger. We become everything that we give away, because when we give, this contracted little self starts to dissolve and the ego dissolves, and we start to see our unity with others. We start to see our unity with all of creation, as the affirmation shows. And so we try to do this in mental ways, and that's what Swamiji is pointing out, is that all the things that we are trying to do in life, if you analyze them, they're really just ways that we're trying to become bigger. You know, watching a lot of movies, for example, we're just trying to get out of this sense of being stuck or locked down and enclosed, and we're trying to get out and feel bigger. And it can temporarily help us, but it doesn't really in the end, because it doesn't really expand our consciousness and expand our soul. Meditation is perhaps the greatest way, but we can't meditate 24 hours a day. So like I said, serving others, serving the Guru, giving to others, whether it's financial aid and supporting others, all these things start to dissolve the hold that the little ego has over us in its effort to try to make us smaller and hold on for dear life to its little self. Because people also find that when they start meditating more, the ego resists it. The ego knows, oh, this person's serious about expanding and becoming one with the infinite. And if they do that, then what's going to happen to me? And so the ego tries to block efforts to meditate and to give sometimes by trying to distract us or say, no, you don't want to do that. Sleep in, or think of yourself. What about yourself? I mean, don't you ever, worry about your own needs? I mean, you have needs too. But you'll see that people who have a very sacrificed way of sacrificing themselves in the sense of giving to others tend to be happier. They tend to be more joyful. They tend to have more peace of mind. And it's because they're letting go of the hold that the ego has on it. In contraction, you will find that contraction causes pain. Contraction causes suffering. It's a spiritual law that's almost absolute. One of the greatest ways to overcome this contractive quality is to pray for other people, praying that God come to them, even praying for people maybe who have hurt you in some way, or who irritate you, to pray that even God bless them. And so I'll tell a story about this, that one time I was having a lot of pain in my side, and it was getting worse and worse and worse, and it was getting really, really intense throughout a 2-day period. And my wife, Maria, at that time, she was very wise, and she left the body about 10 years ago through a lot of health karma, but she was somehow very wise with the physical karma that we all go through. And she understood that I needed to go to the hospital. And she really tuned into what it was even. And she told the doctors what she thought it was, and she was right. But when we went to the emergency room, it was at midnight. It was on a Saturday night. An emergency room in a California hospital where I lived on a Saturday night is a very crazy place because people have had drug overdoses, they've had car crashes, they might have gotten in a fight. It's just a very busy and intense time in an emergency room. And so it took a long time for them to see me, but they brought me into a small room where there was about maybe 7 or 8 other people who were also having emergencies. And I was really feeling contractive because this pain in my side was so intense. All I could do was curl up like in a little ball and just sort of hold on. And I think we've all experienced intense pain like that. And it was very unpleasant. And I realized at one point that the unpleasantness wasn't the pain, it was the feeling of contraction. Because as yogis, contraction itself is painful. And I realized that the pain really was, it was a reminder that I was not one with God and that I was not infinite. It was a reminder that I was identifying with this littleness. And so as I was kind of dealing with this, I overheard one of the other people that was there, and it was a young couple, a boy and a girl. I think they were just teenagers. But the boy had had a drug overdose, and he was in a coma, and it was possible he could die. And the girl was pleading with him, don't die, don't leave the body, come back. I want you to come back. And she was weeping and really trying her best to help him. And my heart really went out to them. And I realized that their pain and their situation was much worse than mine. And so I began praying for her that she be given strength to deal with this. I began praying for him that he pull out of this and that maybe God give him a second chance to figure out his life and to get it right. And so I started praying for them and asking Divine Mother Yogananda, bless these two souls with freedom, with healing, with understanding and wisdom, with thy light. And within almost, I think, less than a minute of praying for them, all of a sudden I realized that not only was my pain, physical pain, including, completely gone at that moment. And I wasn't healed because later the diagnosis was that I had gallstones and they had to remove my gallbladder. The stones were still there and probably causing the same physical pain. But in a way, what happened was I expanded my consciousness to include other people's realities, to give to others, to tune into the infinite light of healing and God flowing through me and sending it to them the best I could. And in that expansion, all pain, all suffering completely vanished. And even in its place was a great joy, the joy of expansion and the joy of divine freedom in that moment and in one level. So pray for others. You will find that the greatest answer to your own suffering, your own misery, your own physical pain even, is to pray for others. Yeah, we have to be practical and deal with things as they come up and, go see a doctor when we have to. But you will find that unhappiness, suffering, all these things go away when we tune into God and share that divinity, share that joy that we experience, and bless others with that joy. You will find this is the greatest expansion, and therefore also it's the greatest freedom. So now Premdas will close by reading the affirmation some more in the reading, and we'll repeat it a number of times.
Thank you, Devarshi. That's very inspiring. Yeah. So now I'm going to again read a few lines from the passage and then let's do the affirmation. Self-expansion is the essence of all aspiration. And the last lines go, the self-expansion towards which all life aspires is of the spirit, an expansion of sympathy, of love, of awareness that comes from sensing God's presence everywhere. So now let's affirm, first loudly. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self, I expand with my great soul self everywhere. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self, I expand with my great soul self everywhere. Now let's do it in a normal voice. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self, I expand with my great soul self everywhere. Now let's do this in a whisper. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self, I expand with my great soul self everywhere. Now let's do this mentally, absorbing completely into our subconsciousness. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self. I expand with my great soul self everywhere. This time offering it at the spiritual line. Let's please repeat it mentally along with me. I feel myself in the flowing brooks, in the flight of birds, in the raging wind upon the mountains, in the gentle dance of flowers in a breeze, renouncing my little egoic self. I expand with my great soul self everywhere. Let's close this with a prayer. Beloved Spirit, in all that is, help me in my own nothingness to find myself one with all that is. Thank you, all friends, for joining us this evening with the affirmation series. Next
Thank you,
week,
everyone.
thank you. Okay, next week we'll be back with the topic generosity. Till then, affirm the self-expansive spirit, and thank you for joining.
Joy to you.